I still remember that evening so clearly. The kind of night that stays with you. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because something quietly shifted inside me forever. The house was unusually still. My son, Leo, was out with his friends, and I was left alone with my thoughts and the faint hum of the city outside. I sat on the couch, exhausted after a long day at work, flipping through channels without really watching anything, when a soft knock echoed from the front door. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was late. Curious, I got up and opened it, and there he was. Jamie. Leo's best friend. I'd watched that boy grow up beside my son. Loud, bright, always full of energy. But that night, something about him was different. He looked smaller somehow, like the weight of the world had finally become too much to carry. His eyes avoided mine as he whispered, barely audible, "Hey, can I stay here for a while? I didn't want to go back. Without thinking, I stepped aside and let him in. The air between us felt heavy, like there was a secret sitting in the room, waiting to be spoken. Jamie wasn't just a kid anymore. He carried something in his posture, in the quiet way he moved, a kind of tension I couldn't ignore. As he sat down, I noticed his hands trembling slightly, his fingers tugging at the sleeves of his hoodie. His eyes darted around the room, like he was searching for somewhere safe to land. Or maybe, for a place to belong. Want some coffee? I asked, my voice softer than usual. He nodded, silent but grateful. We sat in the living room, the only light coming from the small lamp by the couch. Its warm glow painted long, slow shadows across the walls, and in that quiet moment, I realized something was about to change. For a long while, there was only silence, comfortable, but charged. I found myself watching him more closely than I should have. The way his jaw tightened when he was lost in thought, the slight tremor in his hands when he reached for his cup. I thought about Leo, my son, my pride, my whole world, and how strange it felt to have Alex here, in my home, stirring something inside me that I hadn't felt in years. It was confusing, unsettling, and yet somehow comforting. "Thanks for letting me stay," Alex said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Anytime," I replied, though the word felt heavier than I meant it to. The hours slipped by as we talked, about school, about the future, about everything and nothing at all. But beneath every word, something unspoken lingered, a quiet current pulling us closer. I could feel it in every glance that lasted too long, in every shared silence that said more than words ever could. That night, nothing was decided. And yet everything had changed. Alex was no longer just Leo's best friend. Somehow, without meaning to, he had become something more. And deep down I knew this was the beginning of a story I never expected to live. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the blinds, painting soft golden stripes across the living room floor. Alex was still there, sitting quietly on the couch, scrolling through his phone as if he wasn't carrying the weight of the night before. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and sat down across from him. For a moment, we just looked at each other, two people tangled in something neither of us had planned. "Did you sleep at all?" I asked finally, breaking the silence. He shrugged, his usual easy smile replaced by hesitation. "Not really," he admitted. "Couldn't stop thinking." I nodded, pretending to understand only a little. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking either. About him, about the strange shift between us, about what it might mean. Over the weeks that followed, Alex started coming over more often. Sometimes to study, sometimes to hang out with Leo, and sometimes when Leo wasn't around at all. It wasn't just because Leo invited him anymore. Something had changed. When Alex came over, it felt different, like he was searching for something. A safe place, maybe, or maybe something more. We'd sit in the kitchen late at night, talking quietly about life, about dreams. There was a gentleness in his voice, a calm that filled the spaces between words. And sometimes he'd look at me in a way that made my chest tighten, like he could see through the walls I'd spent years building. One evening, he caught me off guard. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's story?" he asked softly. "Like you're stuck somewhere you don't belong?" The question hit harder than I expected. I thought about the years of pretending, the quiet effort to keep everything normal for Leo, even when it didn't feel right for me. "Yeah," I said finally, "more than you know." He nodded slowly, a flicker of something vulnerable passing through his eyes. That night, the space between us felt smaller. The distance I'd always tried to keep began to fade. Maybe this wasn't about Leo's friend anymore. Maybe it was about two broken souls finding pieces of themselves in each other. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be simple. There were boundaries, fears, and consequences waiting at every corner. Still, for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. Days turned into weeks, and Alex's visits became part of an unspoken routine. There was comfort in it. Two people sharing quiet moments, secrets, and unspoken feelings without the pressure of defining what it was. One rainy afternoon, Leo had gone to soccer practice, leaving Alex and me alone in the house. The soft patter of rain tapped gently against the windows, a rhythm that made the air feel heavy but calm. Alex sat close beside me on the couch, his fingers nervously twisting the hem of his shirt. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, without really thinking, I reached out and brushed my hand lightly against his. It was a small gesture, but the spark it created was impossible to ignore. He looked up at me, eyes wide and uncertain. "I'm scared," he whispered, his voice barely holding steady. "Me too," I admitted quietly. But sometimes, fear is the only sign that what we're feeling is real. We fell into silence then, not empty, but full of everything we weren't saying out loud. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I thought about how fragile this was, how one wrong move could break what little we'd built. And yet, beneath the fear, there was warmth, a quiet, steady hope that maybe there was something worth risking after all. The days that followed melted into a rhythm I never expected to crave. Alex started coming by even when Leo wasn't home. We'd sit on the back porch, listening to the hum of the night, sharing coffee and soft laughter that lingered too long in the air. He always stayed longer than he said he would, and I never asked him to leave. One night, under a sky stretched wide with stars, Alex leaned back and sighed. "I hate how quiet my house feels," he murmured. "It's like no one really sees me there." I turned toward him before I could stop myself. "I see you," I said softly. He blinked, his expression tightening for a moment before easing into something tender. "You always say the right things," he whispered. But the truth was I didn't. Most of the time I was terrified of what I was feeling and of what it meant. Still, I meant every word. I saw him, all of him. Then came a moment so quiet I almost missed it. His knee brushed against mine, and he didn't move away. Neither did I. The soft pressure of skin against skin said more than either of us could have found words for. His breath slowed beside me. His shoulder brushed mine, hesitant at first, then resting there still and sure. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Some moments don't ask for permission. They simply happen because they were always meant to. That night we didn't cross any lines. But something sacred passed between us. Something real. And later, when Alex finally left, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that look he gave me before walking out, a look that said everything he couldn't bring himself to say. Or maybe he already had without saying a word at all. And me, I was already falling. Leo had gone away for the weekend to visit his mom out of state, leaving the house unusually still. I hadn't expected Alex to stop by, but just after sunset came that familiar soft knock. He stood there in the doorway, rain dripping from his hoodie, hair damp, cheeks flushed from the cold. He didn't even say hi, just looked at me with the same quiet, fragile expression he'd worn that first night he came over. "I didn't want to be alone tonight," he said softly. I didn't ask why. I just opened the door wider and let him in. We ended up in the kitchen, both barefoot on the cool tile floor, talking while the kettle hissed and filled the silence with warmth. It felt natural, almost familiar, like something we'd done 100 times before. Like we belonged in the same quiet space. Sometimes, Alex said after a pause, eyes fixed on the floor. I feel like I'm living in a glass room. Everyone sees me, but no one really sees me. His voice didn't break, but I could hear the ache beneath it. I see you, I said again, and this time I felt the truth of it settle deep inside me. He looked up slowly, his eyes finding mine and holding them, as if daring me to look away. But I didn't. He stepped closer, just enough that I could feel the faint warmth of his breath. My pulse raced, not from fear, but from recognition, the kind that comes when two people finally stop pretending. I don't know what this is, he whispered. Neither do I admitted, but it feels real. He smiled then, a small, sad smile that somehow said me too, and then, hesitantly, he reached out. Not with certainty, but like someone asking a question without words. His fingers brushed mine on the countertop. Just a fleeting touch, but it sent a quiet shock through me, the kind that steals your breath and grounds you all at once. We stood there, hand brushing hand, eyes locked, everything else fading around us. The world outside didn't exist, only that fragile moment between us, that delicate space where friendship ends and something deeper begins. But we didn't rush. We just stood there, balancing on the edge of what might come next, neither ready to move away, because sometimes the space between two people, the waiting, the not yet, is where the truth lives, and in that silence, I knew this was no longer just a passing connection. It was something we couldn't name, but couldn't deny either. That night, Alex didn't go home. He didn't say he would stay, and I didn't ask him to. It just happened. Like we both understood without words that we needed the company, the safety of being near someone who truly saw us. We sat together on the couch, the television flickering quietly in the background, long forgotten. His shoulder leaned into mine, my arm resting behind him, not touching at first, just close enough to feel his warmth. I used to think I'd never feel safe with anyone, Alex said quietly, his voice uncertain, fragile, like I'd always have to hide this part of me. My throat tightened. He wasn't just talking about being seen. He was talking about being accepted. About that part of ourselves we'd both buried for years, too afraid of what it meant, too afraid of what the world would say. You don't have to hide here, I said softly. Not with me. He turned his face toward me, our eyes meeting in the soft glow of the TV. His expression cracked open, something honest and raw shining through. Gratitude, maybe. Relief. A quiet kind of trust. Then, slowly, Alex leaned forward and rested his head against my chest. Cautious at first, like he was testing whether the ground beneath him would hold. It did. My arms came around him naturally, without thought or hesitation. He let out a long, shaky breath, the kind you release when you've been holding it in for years. I could feel his heartbeat beneath my hand, steady and fast, and realized mine was matching it. We didn't speak after that. There was no need. That quiet, wordless embrace was the first time I truly let him in. Completely. And even though nothing more happened, something had. Because when you've been aching for closeness for so long, even a single moment of being held, of being known, can change everything. That night, I stayed awake with Alex asleep in my arms. And for the first time in years, I wasn't lonely. Morning light crept softly across the living room floor, casting golden lines over the tangled blanket we shared. Alex stirred slightly, his face tucked against my chest and like he belonged there, and in that moment I felt it, fully, completely. This wasn't confusion. It wasn't a phase. It was love. I didn't know when it had started, or how it had grown quietly between us, but it was real, undeniable, and deeper than anything I'd allowed myself to feel in years. When Alex woke, his eyes met mine in the soft glow of morning, and I saw something there I hadn't dared to hope for. He didn't move away, didn't speak at first. He just looked at me like he needed to be sure I was still there, that this wasn't just a dream. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he whispered. "I know," I said. "Me neither." Silence lingered between us, gentle but heavy. Then he sat up, rubbing the back of his neck, suddenly nervous. "But I don't regret it," he said, his voice cracking just slightly. "Last night, it was the first time I felt like I could just be me. Like I wasn't weird or broken. My heart ached at that, because I knew exactly what he meant. "You're not broken, Alex," I said quietly. "You're just brave enough to want something real." His eyes glistened. He shook his head like he didn't quite believe it. "But this," he paused, struggling for words. "It's complicated. You're Leo's dad. He stopped himself, the weight of it all hanging between us. "It's wrong, isn't it?" I took a slow breath. "I don't think love is ever wrong," I said softly. "But, yeah, it is complicated." He looked at me, searching my face. "So, what do we do?" I reached forward, resting my hand over his. "We start by being honest," I said. "With each other. And with ourselves." He squeezed my hand tight like he didn't want to let go. "I'm scared," he admitted softly. "Me too," I said. "But I'd rather be scared and real than safe and numb." Alex nodded slowly. And then, with all the fear still tangled in his voice, he whispered the words I never thought I'd hear. "I think I love you." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't planned. It was raw, quiet, terrified but true, and something inside me softened. Some old wound I'd buried long ago finally began to heal. I leaned in, pressing my forehead against his. "You don't have to say it perfectly," I whispered. "You already did." In that stillness, the truth between us finally breathed. No more pretending. No more almost. Just us. After that morning, nothing was ever the same. But somehow, everything felt right. Alex didn't stop coming around. But now it wasn't just casual visits or stolen glances. We started carving out time just for each other. Quiet walks at dusk, long talks on the porch after Leo went to sleep. Little things. Honest things, we didn't rush it. We were careful, respectful. Because this, whatever it was, mattered too much to risk with haste. But slowly, day by day, love wove itself into everything. He'd leave his books scattered across my table. I'd make his coffee just the way he liked it, too sweet. He'd hum while folding laundry, off-key but charming, and I started looking forward to those sounds. To him. Leo didn't notice much at first, but one evening, as he was heading out with friends, he laughed. "You two spend more time together than I do with either of you." Alex and I froze, just for a second. Our eyes met. The room went quiet. That was the moment we knew. We couldn't keep hiding. It was time to be honest, not just with ourselves, but with the world around us. It was terrifying. But it was freeing, too. One night, under the soft flicker of the backyard lights, Alex turned to me with a quiet smile. "If this were just a story," he said softly, "this is where they'd fade to black." I smiled. "Good thing it's not just a story." He stepped closer and then he kissed me. For a moment, everything paused. The air between us shimmered, not with fear anymore, but with something deeper. Wonder. Awe. And then I kissed him back. Not like in the movies, not dramatic, not desperate, just soft, real. The kind of kiss that says, "I see you. I choose you. I'm not afraid anymore." We stood like that under the stars, two people from different worlds bound by something we never saw coming, but something neither of us could ever walk away from. In time, Leo found out. It wasn't easy. There were questions, long silences, awkward moments, but eventually there was understanding. Because he saw what we had, He saw that it wasn't confusion or a phase. It was love. Maybe unexpected. Maybe unconventional. But real. And now, years later, when I sit beside Alex on the porch with our fingers intertwined, I sometimes think back to that first night he knocked on my door. How innocent it all seemed. How impossible it all felt. And how somehow, against every odd, it became the most important thing that ever happened to me. He was just my son's friend. Until that night. Until he became the man who reminded me what it means to feel again. The man who taught me that real love doesn't always knock when you're ready. Sometimes it knocks when you're lonely, and it walks in wearing a hoodie with eyes full of fear and a heart full of hope. He was just my son's friend, but loving him became the most honest thing I've ever done.